months. He's been talking about it. And then it's been in the river. Yeah. No.
Registration. We'll be easy with it tonight. We'll call the meeting to order, special town board meeting, Monday, June 30th, 2025, 6 o'clock p.m. at the Palmyra Town Hall, W1125 Highway 106, Palmyra. Certification of compliance with open meetings law.
Yes, the agenda was posted tonight.
Roll call.
Kayevsky,
Here.
Martins,
Here.
Sauter.
Here. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of town board minutes that are none for this meeting. Public comment, anybody sign up?
No names.
Oh, I'm not even worried about that. Okay, item number 1, discussion and possible direction or action regarding Town of Palmyra tree problems, culvert issues, and road issues. I asked for this to be put on there. I know Rob was gone on vacation, Michelle was on vacation, but during that period of time, again, I've lost count. We had another one today, but I had multiple notifications from the sheriff's office, a couple constituents, I can't even remember, not at this point, probably 8 trees down again. Okay, and obviously we're going to have some goals with that. And I know in earlier sessions we discussed for fall removal, getting bids for a couple of our problem roads, Tower and Hooper West. But I just wanted that brought to the forefront because Ron's got a job to do, we got a responsibility to the community for their safety, and it hit us hard in, let's call it, in the last 10 days. So that's probably the main reason I wanted this on here, but then also there was a culvert issue that I was notified of. That was actually by you, wasn't it? Yeah. And out on Piper Road, right at the town line, where it crosses the road, right at the town line. I understand it comes in on our side and goes out on Heber, it's one or the other. Or not Heber, Cold Spring. And I did speak, I called the chairman over there, he says, yeah, Frank, half of it's yours, half of it's ours. So, and that was a sizable hole, right?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on what you found?
I got inside the culvert, the bottom of the culvert's gone. The end of the spliced two together and at the seam, obviously washing out there and washed the underground, all the water, the ground washed out underneath the road in the shoulder. And all it took was the board running across the vibrating from the whale board, and it dropped like a 3.5 foot round hole, 2.5 feet deep. It was all hollow, plus it went hollow back underneath the road. But there is no big hole in there, it's the seams pulling apart because there's no bottom, it's just sinking. Call it sinking. So if you stand in it and look, I got a picture of it, maybe inside it, looking through it, you can just see it's got an arch in it.
Did you communicate with Josh about that? Or?
No, I have not.
So,
Well, we talked on the phone the day that.
But I didn't send you pictures.
Oh, yeah. I was lucky enough that I went out there that same night and was splashing around in the culvert. He's exactly right. The first 8 or 10 feet going into the culvert, the bottom's rotten out. The rest of the culvert, surprisingly, looks in really good shape for what I'm assuming how old it is. It's an old, really good culvert, so aging it is obvious, but I'm assuming, there's no end wall to it, it's just a concrete wall that the culvert pokes out of. I'm assuming at some point in time the water got under the bottom of the culvert, started the process of staying wet, rotting out, everything else. So there's a couple, I also talked with Mr. Hoffman, I don't remember if it was the day of, yeah, if it was the day of or the day after. And we essentially both agreed that it's not an emergency, number one, because of where the sinkhole was. It's not right in the middle of the road where it's a traffic problem. We both kind of assume or are estimating that, like Ron said, with that culvert not having a bottom on it, it's slowly just sinking into the ground, and with the tractor running over it, it literally compacted, for lack of a better term, that angular space between the old top of the culvert and where the top of the culvert currently is, because it's rotting out. So there's a couple different options. Steve was gonna look into whether or not we can put a smaller culvert inside that one, put 42-inch inside 48. It's more or less a drainage swale. It's not like part of a river. Obviously it's flowing, it's got field tile connected to it, all of that. And I'm gonna try to get a hold of a couple different companies that I work with on a day-to-day, year-to-year basis, and see if they'd be able to line it. Obviously with no bottom in it, maybe not. But they might be able to do cured in place pipe, which is essentially call it an 1/8-inch or 3/16 plastic pipe that they pull through, steam cure inside of that and reinforce what's there, so that at least it doesn't continue to sink. It would be oblong on the bottom, obviously more like a squash culvert, but there's some options out there. I'm just gonna keep an eye on it. Steve said he would, and he's juggling around doing this thing too, so.
So you'll basically stay in contact with him and communicate there.
Yeah, like we both said, obviously at this point there's a hole filled with gravel on the shoulder of the road. So when we get the fall mowing and that type of stuff, we'll have to be a little aware of that, or you guys will, not so much on us really, but if it's something that we can budget for in 26, it sounded like my take of his opinion is that it sounded like he'd prefer to do that rather than cycling something off in the middle of this year to try to do something, but.
We'll leave that up to them to work with. Steve, Ron, whatever. Back to trees, where are we at on that? What do we wanna do? Is there going down? Tower Road is bad. You go on a Young Road, they were hanging over the culvert in the real bad unsafe areas there, where you have the guardrails on the north side. I think the whole section literally come, with a side rail into the lane. So, what's your thought on what you're gonna do down the road there?
So we had preliminarily talked at our last highway committee meeting that we were gonna do a tree tour to identify trees that were obviously dead that need to come down. Bring that back to the board, how we wanna handle it. There was discussion, I don't remember if it was early this year or the end of last year, we were talking about ordinances and all that kind of stuff. So the easy thing to begin with was, to make a list of low-hanging fruit. The second part of it is looking forward more so for potential road construction 26. That's why we had itemized or identified the fall timeline, is that we would get through the summer if we had instances like this where we had either emergency trees or something come up that we had to use some of that funding, but otherwise the idea is going to be to look forward to 2026 and have those trees taking 15 feet off each side and 15 foot up, wherever that tunnel becomes, for the roads that we're going to work on in 2026. So, depending on how we move forward, obviously, we could put a list of dead trees together and do that separate from any, I'll call it proactive tree work. Tower Road, admittedly, twofold. Number one was right on the border when we went through in 2024 to come up with chip seal this. Tower Road was not quite that priority ranking. It was like 11th or 12th on the list, whatever it turned out to be, but it's still a road that we could chip seal. 6, combined with the tree issue, would be one that we could address in the fall of 25.
For 26, yeah. I will say, going up and down that road several times now, and really looking at the road, I think that road's in pretty good shape for one of our town roads, just like you said, and,
It's gotta be crack filled. There's some areas that we can do spray patching on it or potentially mastic to get rid of some of the edge graveling that's on there, but a chip seal on that road is probably gonna last us 15 years.
yeah, I thought that's one word saving and getting the trees back off of it so it can breathe.
Correct.
Right.
So, I mean, as far as the rest of the trees, I had chatted with, I think his name is Brian, from the DNR. When we had our,
You sent that letter?
oh, perfect.
Well, listen, you know.
Sorry for interrupting you, but
Yeah.
with all these tree problems, and if you take a real slow ride, which I think you have apparently,
Yeah.
they've got themselves in a world of hurt out here on Little Prairie Road. When those trees start coming over and hitting those electric lines, the whole line right up dead. And they're gonna fall right into the electric lines. We made them aware of that, right? And we're asking for their help, we're asking for them to cut some of these trees back and drop them into the forest right that are close to the road. There's people that'll come out and cut them up. You know, they don't have to go through a big permit to operate an ATV and get all that permission. They're right off the road, where those two huge ones are out there, I put orange X's on them, so we knew where they were. And up around that hill again, if you start looking in there, there's some that, right up top, I had 8, 10 of them between the bottom of the hill and the top of the hill. They're kind of hid back there, but they're gonna come down and most likely fall on the road in that portion. So that's an area of concern, and we let them know about Young Road, right? We put Young Road in there, Tamarack, Young, and Little Prairie. And we expressed the fact that we feel it is very dangerous. I don't know if any of you are aware, but there was an accident on Little Prairie. I don't know why they went off the road there, but, it didn't have anything to do with the road, they didn't cut back far enough. I think it was just past Higgins. Just past Higgins, between those two dips, Higgins, High Point, and the corner. I went out there and I found out there's 2 ambulances involved. If you believe Facebook. Well, the Jones County. Okay, but, so those were just concerns, and the way things were dropping, boy, call on Ron, this is something is that bad, so. Anything else on this, or?
One other, just a more or less spring problem, I guess, is we were on 8 days, we also had that culvert out on Island Road that, not quite the same thing, but sort of the same potential concept of sinkhole in the road because the culvert failed. So that's another one that we gotta look at some point.
You feel that,
I haven't stuck my head into that one because it's way smaller than the one out on Piper. So we'll have to do a little more CSI work on that to see what is going on.
now, the big one, you do this with, like that smaller one, I will tell you that I thought I had a drain plug, and I called it service up Clinton, and they come in with a camera and the whole thing, that was a $200 bill. I'm just saying.
Yeah, the only problem with culvert, I know what you're talking about, is their camera isn't meant to go over the corrugated parts, especially when they're full of silt or whatever else. Depending on what that size is, I unfortunately was out there when it started to run. I thought it would be raining out there. By the time I got there, it beat me there. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time sitting my head in the ditch. But the other part of it too is that if it's a 12 or 18-inch pipe, their cameras are meant for like 6 to 8 inch at biggest, and then you only couple of those, as long as we're on culverts, two things I brought up at the last meeting, the triangle, we're gonna call it,
Oh,
the Y.
Yeah.
Sounds like the management district is working on getting quotes to not re-ditch, but re-swale in between where the culvert we cleaned out was and call it the, north of the Blue Spring Lake sign, point.
Yeah, they did get a quote for that.
Okay.
Just saw it today.
The second is, the 1200 block-ish of South Shore Drive, we had hired the village to clean that culvert out. The good news is it's flowing. The bad news is that it's still flowing down the end of the road to get to it, so kind of as part of the greater drainage-related thing, I was out there 2 different times last week because of a single-family home that was built that we've been dealing with for 2 years, washing gravel on the side of the road. You guys were out there, took the shoulder off, they topsoiled and seeded their front yard, and a third of it ended up at the bottom of the hill again. So, been dealing with Tom Marks, more so on the site plan, site erosion control kind of thing. If you guys get calls on that, they're supposed to be, the homeowner is supposed to be addressing what happened, a week or so ago, so. Time to tell on that one.
Yeah. Can you put down on the next agenda or whatever we need to spot, I want a discussion on that Blue Spring Lake Board of the condition is involved. So you're gonna have to talk about that. Something that popped in my head, the condition of the Blue Spring Lake Information Board, I want to talk about that next. Couple people said it's getting in bad shape. So we'll talk about that next month. Anything else? Rob, you got any questions? Nope. Okay, well, I guess we're moving on to number 2, folks, executive session, the town.
I want to let you guys know, if you want to come and see, we have 17 culverts we're doing. If you want to come and see how we're installing them, what we do with the base, compress them and stuff, all that, I can give you multiple roads, you can come and see what we're doing. Anytime during the day. Tomorrow we're doing one on Marion Road. Okay, 40-inch concrete, we're gonna bust it up, pull it out, put it in.
Okay, I can say I'm not, you told me about that. They're good, Heber's gonna repave?
Yeah, they're paving from the town to 106.
From
106 to the town line of Palmyra, up past Faulkner's and down the road.
But let's see, okay, so they're gonna go over the hill to where that new stretch of pavement is. And I did say I wanted to bring this up because, well, what are you doing for, Heber? Just the 2-inch overlay, or what are you
It's
doing?
gonna be 2 3/4 when we're done, and we'll do a straight, and we'll do 1 inch and 3/4 compress. It's gonna be L4 DOT asphalt, butted ends, so we'll be butting your asphalt.
So like saw cut?
Yeah.
But not milling anything, just an overlay.
Yep, just over there.
So, when are you doing that?
Probably 6 weeks or so. Doing a road, Morningside next week, Thursday, if anybody would want to come and see.
Where's that?
It's in Hebron off of, lower, Hebron Road.
So from,
If you know where Jacob's gravel pit is,
no,
just, it's just.
It's nowhere near there.
If you get on.
is it past Johnson?
Yes, yeah, you go
Keep
past
going
Johnson,
west.
Stroh, Wyndham, and then the gravel pit's there, the next road is, Morningside.
When are you doing that? Just let me
Next
know.
week, Thursday.
Go ahead, man.
Is he a resident of the town or a contractor?
He does all of our road work.
Okay. So,
Mowing,
no, the reason I'm asking is because we're talking about all the jobs that we need to do, and he's the only contractor in the room, almost putting his name in for bids.
No, he isn't. We're asking him questions for advice.
Okay, sir, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cause anything, I'm just putting it out there, that if we're gonna talk about this stuff, we should open it up to all contractors, say, hey, we're just gonna discuss business about this, or not have contractors in the room.
Jonathan?
Well, we're not accepting bids right now because we don't know what work is
But
needed to be done.
right, but, I mean, he's saying, hey, come look at the work I'm doing.
What I heard is he's just telling us what work he's doing in the area.
Right.
Anything else? Are we for sure done with this item? Okay, I'm sure I'm done. Okay, number 2, executive session. The town board intends to convene in a closed session, not to reconvene pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.851, paragraph 1, sub G, for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the town who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the town with respect to litigation which is likely to become involved. During the closed session, the board will discuss Jefferson County case number 24-CB-437, State of Wisconsin, Winona Brassett versus Town of Palmyra Board of Supervisors. This discussion requires a closed session because it involves confidential legal strategy related to ongoing litigation and open discussion that adversely affect the town's position. Entering into closed session under this exemption is necessary to preserve attorney-client confidentiality and protect the town's legal interest. And Chapter 19.85, paragraph 1, sub E of the Wisconsin statutes, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specific public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Item to be discussed, negotiation of fire/EMS contract between the Town of Palmyra and the Village of Palmyra. This discussion requires a closed session because it involves confidential strategy related to contract negotiations, and open discussion could adversely affect the town's position. Entering into closed session under this exemption is necessary to preserve negotiation strategy. I'll make a motion to go to closed session.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I guess I do have a couple of questions, not so much related to the first point, but related to the fire and EMS contract. If it would be appropriate of us to discuss some of the unofficial minutes of the last village board meeting in an open session before we convene in a closed session.
That would be fine, yes.
Okay, so do we need to take, should we hold off on the vote until after the discussion? Go ahead.
So I attended, in the last 2 weeks, I've attended 2 village meetings. One was their public safety and budget and finance committee meeting, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, and the last one was this last Thursday, which originally was supposed to be a meeting between village and Rob. Rob was obviously out of town, then it turned into a budget meeting, and then it turned into a village board meeting, so I attended nonetheless to try to get some information. I've got 6 pages of notes, but in the big picture of things, summary from the Budget and Finance Committee Joint Public Safety Committee meeting was that they toured the committee members around the fire hall, public safety building, kind of addressing individual building needs. That took about an hour and a half-ish or so. The second part of the meeting, they discussed the same type of thing, but from a, should we look at potentially building a new public safety building or remodeling the existing building to facilitate housing their employees, or I'll use the term remediate the deferred maintenance that was necessary on the building. Each one of them had individual costs, ballpark, they were kind of a summary of staff estimates and, initial brush by quotes, so to speak, or, estimates from contractors. They were looking at approximately $450,000 to update or do the deferred maintenance piece. They were looking at about $1.2 million to $1.5 million to remodel the fire hall. And then somewhere between $3 and $5 million for a new building, which each one of those, they had conversations about all of it. Then they moved on to another agenda item, which was their staffing. They're trying to transition their staffing model from the what I understand to be two budgeted full-time firefighter EMS positions. They've so far been staffing 3, I'll call it year to date. And they were discussing with Budget Finance Committee the potential to allocate funding or identify funding for a 4th person. That 4th person, 3rd and 4th person would allow them to enter a structured fire without having to call mutual aid. 2 people would get apparatus to the fire, with only 2 people that can't enter the building. So a whole host of things went on with that conversation. And then ultimately they threw in portions of the conversation about the town fire EMS contract and their budget and trying to put all of this information together in anticipation of continuing discussions with the town on the contract. The meeting on Thursday of last week was, the agenda changed sort of the day before, day and a half before. There was an item on their budget agenda to discuss the town fire EMS contract amongst their committee. That was ultimately not on their full board agenda. It was more so police related, because there's apparently some internal debate about the future of the police department, staffing at fire hall for firefighter EMTs, and then they discussed the deferred maintenance list. It had like a 70-some page meeting packet that had historical quotes included for the building and everything else, as well as capital equipment replacement and all of the things that cost-wise for our contract may affect the future. In the course of conversation, I think from our last meeting, we met, I'm gonna say a month and a half ago, whatever it was, in closed session, they have refined a potential formula for figuring out or dividing costs that the village president had, and I took a picture of, for a quote-unquote photo copy. So it's purple because it's purple. But they have put together 3 different, essentially, options, I'm gonna call it. Down towards the bottom half, it's using call volume and equalized value, which is our current contract. They're using equalized value and population, and then they're using call volume, equalized value, and population, like you had discussed with them before. So each one of those percentages is the way that they are presenting how that calculation works out into a cost share. Again, our contract is 49.8% of what they had outlined as a 3-year running budget, let's say. Equalized value and population makes the town's portion go up to 54.4, so call it 5% increase. And the call volume, equalized value, and population actually reduces our cost share by approximately 2.5 to 3%.
So are you saying right now we're paying 49.8?
Correct. So they use 2024 equalized value, which I verified that those those two numbers for the village and the town are accurate. The population, they pulled it from the state's website, index on political subdivisions and each one's population. And then they've got this calculation under it, so I thought this was pertinent information as far
This
as.
is all information we want to have. That's not gonna discuss.
You mean with you, remember, I'm on this, you discussed last
Last closed session, we went through this, and I've also continued our discussion
with Tim,
Yeah.
community or whatever.
I hadn't seen or hadn't remembered this percentage breakdown, which is why I brought it back, so. Aside from that, they anticipate within 2 weeks, as of last Thursday, they would have a budget for 2026 roughed out. And I have no idea, honestly, that they even know what that number looks like at the moment to continue conversation with us, so.
So, I'm assuming that, you have a meeting scheduled,
2 weeks.
so your next meeting is July,
Yes.
so before our next meeting. Well,
So is there something you want to accomplish with this discussion, or just an information?
Informational updates that I garnered from.
from the site.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. Anything else, any other discussion on this? Otherwise, now we'll take well, there was a motion and a second, and we'll take a vote on that, and we'll do a roll call. Okay, a motion to go into closed session for both these items, has been made and a second. There's no further discussion, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Roll call.
Okay, now roll call vote.
Gajewski,
Aye.
Martins, Sauer.
Aye. Closed session.
So the sign on the door will say village